You're listening to the CLE Show.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the CLE Show Rock Review. This week, it's a fab kind of episode with Dave Schwensen, author of The Beatles in Cleveland. He'll be sharing with us some fun facts on the Mop Tops visiting our little town back at the height of Beatlemania. Plus, we'll feature some local bands that most certainly are influenced by the Beatles. You can catch Dave's book presentation programs on August 1st and 14th at the Bay Village and Fairview Park branch of the Cuyahoga County Public Libraries, respectively. Admission is free. Now, here's some more events that should be on your calendar. The annual Warehouse District Street Festival is where Block Party meets music and food festival. You can join them on August 5th. On August 10th, Vanishing Shores, Orange Animal, and Columbus's Theo's Loose Hinges will be at the Coda in Tremont. On August 11th is the Signal Tree Fest in Akron. Coup de Grace, Love Abstract, Me Time and the Raging Crush, amongst many other local acts, will be performing during this family-friendly food, drink, and music event. You can head to the Rock Hall on August 19th to cheer on the runners of the 2018 Rock Hall Half Marathon. On September 2nd, Teddy Boys and Holy Daughters will be opening for Texas band Ancient River at the Beachland. It's the Heights Music Hop. 3 nights of live music in Cleveland Heights kicks off on September 13th. Of course, if you like the Beatles in Cleveland presentations, you can check out the Behind the Beatles series at the Bop Stop on September 21st and 22nd. Thomas Mulready will be focusing on the White Album and Revolver. Bright Winter is now accepting band submissions for February 2019. You can visit www.brightwinter.com for details. And on August 15th, Mini Rooms and Angelo De Augustine will be at Mahal's with local support from the 2 singers of The Ledges and these guys, Forage and Wander. This is their track, River North.
think I'm finally accepting that we all end the same. This is David Hamilton. I'm the lead singer of Uptight Sugar. And obviously, like most musicians are, I'm unbelievably inspired by the Beatles, and most of the guys in the band are as well. I think what sort of inspires me the most about them is probably just how they fearlessly sort of floated through genres, whether it was like blues or R&B or any of that kind of stuff. They just kind of went for it and made it their own. And, songs like maybe I think you're about to hear Broken Love coming up here is a song we did, and it's sort of based in blues, kind of to that Beatles style, where it's obviously not full blues, but it's just a nice rock and roll version of blues. And I think the Beatles did a great job of doing music like that as well.
Like a great big hole, yeah, it pulls you in and it steals your soul. There's nothing that you can do. Say broken hearts, they don't fade away. A forgotten smile, baby, one foot in the grave. It's creeping out of the tomb. After 3 days, sitting right by you, tapping on the window pane. It never fades away. It's creeping out of the dark. They say broken hearts, love that don't fade away. I'm lost in your smile, baby. Go out the way that you came. It's creeping out of the tomb. After 3 days, sitting right by you, tapping on your window. Hey, it never fades away. It's creeping out of the dark.
Okay, now we're joined by Dave Schwensen, who is the author of The Beatles in Cleveland. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Well, hi, Jay. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I was really excited to have you come on because I've read so much and watched some of your presentations about the Beatles in our hometown. And I just wanted to find out a little bit more about what you've written. So you've written The Beatles in Cleveland, which
Yes.
you've dubbed detailing two of the wildest concerts in Beatles history. What
Wildest
inspired
and
you to
out of-
write that book?
Wildest and out of control. What inspired me to write the book was my mom and dad took me to see the Beatles when they were in Cleveland. And it's one of those experiences you kind of never get over. There's never been anything like that before or since. And it's something I've been talking about ever since, throughout school, college, my career. Everybody always gets into comparison mode. Hey, what's the best group you've ever seen? What's the best concert you've ever been to? And everybody would have all these answers. And I always said, well, the Beatles. And I always got the extra look. Wow, you saw the Beatles? What was that like? And so I would tell them the story about how Cleveland was just out of control. Fans rushing up to the stage and jumping on stage with the Beatles and stopping the concert. And I started, I just kept talking about it. And eventually I started writing entertainment reviews for newspapers. And I thought, well, maybe I should write a review of this concert in Cleveland so I don't forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and I posted it on my website, which is a website for comedians, actually, because I am a comedy coach with the improv comedy clubs. And I started getting emails the very next day. It was a one-page review of the Cleveland Stadium concert. And I started getting emails the next day, wow, can you tell us more? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I got no life. Okay, yeah, I can type some more. So I just kept adding to it. Then I started receiving emails from people that were there. And then I thought there was a possibility of a book. I'd written two before, so I thought, well, this could be another book. And I started interviewing some of the people involved in the Cleveland concerts. Some very well-known people on the North Coast, like Jane Scott from The Plain Dealer, and Jerry G. from KYW, and Big Jack Armstrong from Wixie, and Norman Wayne, who produced both Cleveland concerts. And, next thing I knew, I had a book.
And what sort of
And there you
things
go.
did you find out in your research?
Oh, well, just, how different Cleveland was than the other concerts. Cleveland always just seemed to do something different. Again, like both shows in Cleveland, 64 at Public Hall and 66 at Cleveland Stadium, were stopped. They were delayed. They continued, but they were stopped by police because the fans just got out of control. And even though some concerts by the Beatles were stopped in other cities, not all of them. Maybe the next year they came in, they had better protection or whatever they do. But Cleveland, it seemed to be a pattern. And one of the funny things that I put in the book when I interviewed Jerry G., again, the disc jockey from Cleveland in the 60s, he said, and he toured with the Beatles for 2 years. And so he got to see them perform in other cities. And he told me, he said, the difference between Cleveland and the other cities, he said, in the other cities, they wanted to see the Beatles. They wanted to scream. In Cleveland, it seems they all wanted to touch one of
They
them.
wanted them.
Yeah.
To take them
And
home, a
that's-
piece of them.
and that's what they did.
Crazy. So, why do you think 50 years on, there's still this affinity and this this group still commands such intrigue that you're a very busy man going around telling this story?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest. It's the music, first of all. The music has just continued to be relevant. It's good music. You can't deny it. And but just also the times, nostalgia for the 1960s. And, that was a very historic decade, if you want to call it, because, I do my programs around the area. I do libraries and associations, organizations, special events, but I also do a lot for schools, junior highs and high schools. And, when they get into the 1960s or, like the history classes or even like the music classes, they study the music. They study the music of the Beatles because it is, so powerful. It still lives on. And so when I do these, say, some of the larger Beatles festivals, especially like New York or Chicago, Los Angeles, I get a lot of younger teenagers come in, with their parents. And their parents are too young to remember the Beatles, but the teenagers come in, they have their Beatles T-shirts and books, and, they're fans. It just continues. I didn't really expect that when I wrote it, when I started doing this. I thought, well, it would be the baby boomers. But no, there's generations after that. They're still into the Beatles.
So can you impart a little nugget of a story from your book?
Oh, let me see. Here's my favorite story from the book. Now, I grew up in a place called Vermilion, Ohio. You've heard of it, correct? We're out here by Cedar Point, the small boat capital of Lake Erie. On Saturday night, August 13th, the Beatles performed 2 shows in Detroit. Now, things were different in the 60s than they are today. I mean, when Beyonce tours today, Justin Timberlake, even the Rolling Stones, I mean, for crying out loud, they're still touring.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own private jets. You know, they fly into these, you know, big homes they have in the center of places so they can stay in the same beds every night, different things. In the 60s, it wasn't like that. So when the Beatles finished their concert at Olympic Stadium in Detroit, they ran off stage, out the back door, and got on a Greyhound bus with the opening acts from the tour. So they headed south out of Detroit. They hung a left on the Ohio Turnpike. And in 1966, there used to be a turnpike plaza called the Vermilion River Plaza, where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And about 10:30, 11 o'clock that night, the bus pulled into the Vermilion River Plaza, and the Beatles got out. And they stood outside the bus smoking cigarettes, and George Harrison sat on a curb with a towel over his head. He was still sweating from Detroit. And their manager, Brian Epstein, sent his assistant in for ice cream bars for everybody. And I found this out because I interviewed 2 of the people who toured with the Beatles. One was Bobby Hebb, who had the #1 song that summer, Sunny. And then also Barry Tashian, who performed with one of the opening groups called the Remains.
Mm-hmm.
And he kept a diary. And in his diary, he said they stopped at the Vermilion River Plaza. And then there was also a carload of girls that followed them from Detroit.
Right.
And they got their autographs, and they got their autographs in Vermilion, Ohio.
There you go.
At a Saturday night, August 13th, 1966. So there you go.
Just so every day, just rock up at a rest stop.
Exactly.
And
Jeez, if I'd known that, I would have jumped on my bike.
I was going to say,
over there and said hello.
And more stories like this you can catch with Dave as he goes around and talks about his book and shares his stories. You do photos. What else can people expect from some of your presentations?
I always show up before I have a memorabilia display, so people can always get in like half an hour before the program starts. And I have rare pictures of the Cleveland concerts and newspaper articles from the Plain Dealer, Cleveland Press, just different things like that, interesting things they can look at. And then during the program, I show some very rare films of the Beatles performing in Cleveland. 1964 at Public Hall and also 1966 at Municipal Stadium.
Excellent.
So I always say we usually get a pretty good crowd for this, and I always say they don't come to see me. They come to see the Beatles.
Yes.
And, being a comedy coach, I try to make it humorous.
I was going to say, it's a very funny. You definitely get some laughs when you come to see you talk about the book. So
I do get carried away. I get a little over enthusiastic, but we do have a lot of fun with it.
It's good. So you're going to be at Bay Village Library on August 1st, and then Fairview Park on August 14th. Is that right?
I'm looking at my calendar right now. I think you're correct. I think you're correct there. You're ahead of me. Yes, Bay Village is August 1st at 7 o'clock. And Fairview, I have on my calendar here in front of me on Tuesday, August 14th at 7 o'clock.
And you also go around, because you also wrote another book about the Beatles, you said and that was more focused on their Shea Stadium performance, the infamous Shea Stadium performance?
The infamous Shea Stadium performance. It's a very interesting story because when the Beatles in Cleveland, after it came out, I was contacted by a photographer in New York City who bought the book at a bookstore. I used to live in Manhattan for a long time, and he was in my local bookstore, and he bought the book, The Beatles in Cleveland, and said, you should do a book on the Shea Stadium concert. And it got me enthusiastic about that, and I started contacting those people. So, yes, I've written a book about the infamous 1965 Beatles at Shea Stadium, which I call the beginning of stadium rock. And there had been nothing like that before. Elvis did a few stadium shows in the 50s, but nothing on this scale.
But that was really that was sort of the swan song of the Beatles. They didn't really perform live after that, or much after that.
They did. They had another year of touring after that, but it was the pinnacle. It was even for them, because I do another program on this, by the way. I'm going through the libraries and the schools. We're doing the Beatles at Shea Stadium, so I show the rare films of that and audio and things. And that was the height of Beatlemania in the media capital of the world, New York City, and it became a television special. But after that, it all kind of went downhill for them. It got to be it actually got to be very dangerous to be one of the Beatles.
Yeah.
So we talk about that.
Great. And where can people pick up your book then, Dave?
They're available through all the bookstores, but I'll plug Amazon.com. They're on there, and Barnes & Noble's still in business, and I also have a website. If you go to BeatlesInCleveland.com or BeatlesSheaStadium.com, you can order a signed copy.
Oh, fabulous. All right.
Yeah,
we'll check it out.
Fab.
Well, thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate you joining us and telling us your story of the Beatles in Cleveland.
Well, thank you very much, Jay. I had a good time, and hopefully we'll see everyone at one of the presentations soon.
That was solo artist Justin Hartley from Akron with The Morning After. He writes and plays all of the instruments and cites the Beatles as one of his many inspirations for his work. Next up is Miss Macy and the Low Pay Daddies with Bottom Song. This group out of Willoughby, Ohio categorizes themselves as a type of folk, jug, and skiffle band. And of course, without skiffle, there wouldn't be the Beatles. John Lennon's first band, the Quarrymen, played this type of Americana music before forming what would ultimately become the Beatles. It also was the genre for another famous British rock god, Jimmy Page, and the precursor to Led Zeppelin.
I'm gonna excuses and the pleas, excuses and the pleas. Last attempt and final words to try and make some peace, try and make some peace. But by now his heart was cold and every bone was bad, every bone was bad. This is what happens when you mess around with, when you mess around with one bullet to the head, another for good measure. The body fell straight to the floor in broad and twisted pleasure. Went by and in the field, police had found the gun. Police had found the gun. His prints were on it, they had him. Suspect number one. Suspect number one. But he was loco, bad and rough, and he knew just what to do. He knew just what to do. He cut his fingertips right off. Police would have no proof. Police would have no one finger at a time, erasing any trail of the things that he had done, and that's the tale of one bullet to the head, another for good measure. The body fell straight to the floor in broad and twisted pleasure. Everyone knew he had killed that man some weeks ago. Man some weeks ago. No one dared stand witness against El Machado. Against El Machado. One bullet to the head, another for good measure. The body fell straight to the floor in broad and twisted pleasure. One finger at a time, erasing any trail of the things that he had done, and that's the tale of what you gonna do, you got no proof. What you gonna do, you got no. What you gonna do, you got no proof. What you gonna do, you got no. What you gonna do, you got no proof. What you gonna do, you got no. What you gonna do, you got no proof. What you gonna do, you got no. What you gonna do, you got no proof. What you gonna do, you got no. What you gonna do, you got no proof. What you gonna do, you got no. What you gonna do, you got no proof. What you gonna do, you got no. What you gonna do, you got no proof.
And from Grand Rapids, Michigan, that was Desmond Jones. Obviously, not only taking inspiration from the Beatles in its name, but also clearly in its music. That track was El Merchero from its debut album Gold Till the Grave, released late last year. They're currently on tour, but they'll be heading somewhat in our direction at Fleet Fest in Toledo on July 28th, and then in their hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan on August 21st at the Frederick Meyer Gardens. Next up, we have Orange Animal, which, if you stick with me, has a tertiary link to the Beatles. Clearly, this band harkens the rough and ready of Joe Cocker, and as we know, Joe Cocker owned some of the best Beatles classics. Here they are with Soothe Me.
It'll all be alright if you just soothe me. It'll all be alright if you just soothe me. Well, I'm worn down and restless, discarded by you where my last stand set down, a mile from the truth. Can't stop this catastrophe, won't go to sleep, you see, so all that I'm asking you to come home to me. Let go of your reasons, let go of your plans, let go of your long-worn excuses that don't mean a damn. wasting your time, but show me how you do it now. I still want you alive and let it sail when you fall in the virgin carpet, but nothing at all. Yeah.
That was new music from Beach Stav. It's a snappy little 2-track release, of which that was part of it, Coded Line. And you can check it out and download it from its Bandcamp. To play us out, we have Akron singer-songwriter Gretchen Pleuss with Hate My Song, which we totally don't. So many chances to catch her in our neck of the woods on Sunday, August 5th at the Mustard Seed Cafe in Akron, or at the Signal Tree Fest, as mentioned earlier, on August 11th. And then she'll be in Cleveland Heights at Panini's on Coventry Road on August 12th. Thank you so much for listening to the CLE Show Rock Review. I've been your host, Jay. Have a good one.
Feel free to hate my song, disagree when I'm wrong. Play with my hair when I'm crying. Call me out when I'm lying. Ooh, I'll always be here for you. Ooh, I hate you when I adore you. Ooh, I'll always be here for you. Ooh, I hate you when I adore you. Feel free to hate my song, disagree when I'm wrong. I think I'll call you when I'm drunk. I think the wine should help me talk. I'll nod my head until you're right. Just don't leave me alone tonight. Ooh, I'll always be here for you. Ooh, I hate you when I adore you. Ooh, I'll always be here for you. Ooh, I hate you when I adore you. To hate you when I adore you. I bet you got a good idea of how I hit my all-time low. I'm not trying to criticize you. I just want